Here are 20 tips for beginners in Hell Let Loose. Tip number 1 is to understand the game mode that you are playing. There are 2 different game modes. The first is Warfare, where the team with the most points held will be the winner at the end. The other game mode is Offensive, and here one of the teams is trying to capture a certain amount of points in order, while the other team is defending and trying to prevent them from capturing the points. And the reason this is important is, for example, if you are playing the Offensive game mode and you are on defense and you are just running off into enemy territory and not defending the point, you're going to lose this mode. So make sure you're working with the rest of the team to either attack or defend your points. Next, let's talk about changing classes. On Xbox, you can click the LB button. It's probably L1 on PlayStation. Usually the controls for this are listed at the bottom of the screen when you are about to spawn in. But clicking this is going to bring you into the Switch class section. Once you're in here, you can see which classes are available, as certain classes only allow a certain amount of people to be them. And let's actually get into what each of these roles do. The first and most important role is the officer role. And the reason why this is so important is because he's in charge of leading his squad, communicating with other squad leaders, and the commander. He's also the one who can place outposts, which allows anyone in the squad to spawn on that point. And he can also build garrisons, which allows him to build spawn points for everyone on that team. All you have to do is switch through your inventory to the watch section, and then in there you can switch between building an outpost and building a garrison. Outposts you can build for free, whereas garrisons will require 50 supplies to be put down on the ground, and then a garrison can be built. It's also important to note that the only person who should be in the officer role should be someone with a mic. If you don't have a mic, you're doing your team a disservice. Pick another class. The next class is the Supplier, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. The Supplier has the box of supplies, so they can drop them for the officer so he can build a spawn point for the whole team. He can also use the supplies to help the engineer out with his roles of defense and building other structures, which we'll get to. The next class is the Engineer class, and his role is to place defensive items to protect points, but he can also place something called nodes, which helps out the main commander to do bombing runs and drop vehicles and do all those types of things. So you can kind of build this constant flow of supplies for the commander. So there's really a lot of tasks for the engineer to do and help the team out with. The next class is the anti-tank. Really don't need to explain this. You have an RPG, you can blow up tanks. That's what the role does. The next class is the medic, and his main thing is he can heal people if they do get knocked down, so long as they didn't get shot in the head. It is debatable on how useful this class is, because it might be just quicker to spawn back on the garrison, but that is still an option. The next class is the Rifleman or the Assault classes, and these ones are mainly for just shooting at people. They don't really actually help the team per se, other than defending points and attacking enemies and things like that. And finally, the last class that I want to bring up is the Commander role, and his job is to completely lead everyone, the squad members, everybody, and he also has special controls that he can use to drop supply crates full of supplies for people. He can do bombing runs. He can generate vehicles that have boxes on them. It's a very interesting role. You have to get to level 30 in order to be this. Tip number 10 is that games are won with garrison/spawn points. If you cannot spawn in on the map near the points that you need to capture or defend, then your team can't get there and the enemy's just going to take over. So really, the team that's going to win is going to be the team that has the best garrisons set up in the right places, so that way their troops can attack either to defend or to capture other points. Make sure you're helping your squad build garrisons, and if they're not building garrisons, then you need to hop in that role and take care of that. Tip number 11 is that spawn points/garrisons can be destroyed. And this is why, one, you want to have multiple garrisons set up around a point, so that way if an enemy comes in and destroys it, which they just have to lay down next to the garrison and hold down the X button, or if a bombing run hits it, it can be destroyed. But if you have multiple garrisons set up, then it's really easy to spawn in and you're not forced back all the way to the far back spawn. This is also good to know because you can destroy an enemy's garrison or outpost that they are spawning on, forcing them to move back and helping you take a point or defend a point. Tip number 12 is that communication is required. If you do not have a mic, you seriously need one for this game. Talking to teammates and getting things done, setting up strategies where you can take over points or defend them is super important. So if you don't have a mic, get one. It is crucial for this game and for winning matches. Tip number 13 is if you hold still, you can hold your breath and zoom in. So if you're aiming down the sights, you can click, I believe it is RB on the Xbox or R1 on PlayStation. And that's going to allow you to kind of hold your breath and do a slight zoom in with your gun. And this can really help for some of those long distance shots where you're aiming at someone. Tip number 14 is to crouch walk. I've seen tons of people just run standing straight up, and this makes you a really easy target. If you crouch, a lot of times you remain hidden behind certain objects to where you can't get shot at, or it's really hard to shoot at you. And crouch running / walking is basically the same speed as running while you're standing up. So definitely make sure you are crouching. Tip number 15 is to pretend that you have one life. This is not Call of Duty. This is not Battlefield. There are delays for how long you can spawn in. So if you treat the game like you have one life and you be defensive and careful where you run, you're not running out into middle of fields and getting shot down, you're going to do a whole lot better at this game. You're going to get way more kills because you're being strategic about where you peek out and making sure you're not getting killed super easily. Tip number 16 is to subscribe to this channel as I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and it's a great way to say thanks for this video. Tip number 17 is that supply trucks spawn in the beginning and can drop 150 supplies. So there's actually 2 of these boxes that carry 150 supplies, and this can be a really easy way for the engineer to build some nodes, so that way the main commander has supplies to do bombing runs and drop more supplies for the team and build tanks. But also, if you want to get a garrison out early and you don't necessarily want to work something out with the supplier person on your team, you can easily just take the supply truck, drop supplies, and then be able to build a garrison. Tip number 18 is to avoid running out in open fields if you can. This is a great way to get shot. You don't see anyone, but there is someone most likely watching and they will shoot you. So walk along the edges of things, stay in the bushes, lay down if you have to. That is how you're going to be able to survive and actually make progress on the field. Tip number 19 is to use your map. This is just one of the middle buttons on the controller. You can pull up the map. And with the map, you can actually see little sectors, and this is actually a great way to communicate with your team where you want to place garrisons and different things like that. So utilize the map. It can also show where enemies are. If your commander does a spy plane over the top, you can actually see the little red dots on the screen and see where the enemy's at. And tip number 20 is by clicking left on the directional pad, either holding it down or double tapping it, you can actually mark enemies, tanks, mark where you want a garrison to be built. This can be super useful to communicate with team members. And if you learned something from this video, please do me a thanks, hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me.